welcome to the Fit Dads podcast. My name is Bradley Thompson. I'm joined by Ryan Dutton. It's quite a big topic today, Ryan. Semaglutide, Ozempic, GLP-1 Agonist, whatever you want to call this miracle weight loss injection. We're just going to try and shed some light on how it works and who potentially in our eyes should consider it. It has hit the mainstream news and it's come under a lot of discussion. Could lead to a lot of good, could lead to a whole lot of bad. So
it's in the balance. It's in the balance at the moment.
Big one, mate. Big one. First things first, mate. For people who don't know what it is and how it works, do you want to shed a bit of light on that for us?
Yeah. So the category of drug that's like being popularised at the moment, this weight loss injection, is known as GLP-1. It's Ozempic, Semaglutide, Wegovy, etc. Are just a few of the commercially known names for these products, things you might have heard in the kind of headlines. There's a big increase in both media exposure and popularity, mainly because, well, they work really well and the success rate is actually fantastically high. They can be bought online or prescribed by a doctor. Doctors will usually prescribe them to patients with a BMI of 27 or over, which is actually pretty shocking because a BMI of 25 isn't that high, and it isn't that big. I know clients who are 27 BMI, and they won't look at them and go, they need to get on weight loss drugs. These weight loss drugs are essentially an appetite suppressant. That's what they do. They stop you feeling hungry. GLP-1 is a hormone that's found in our digestive system naturally. It's increased when we eat, and it tells our body to make insulin to control our blood sugar. It also slows down how quickly food moves around your digestive system, from your stomach to your intestines, and it gives the brain that signal that you are feeling full. That's essentially what the GLP-1 drug does. Currently, there are no major short-term or long-term side effects of GLP-1s. However, they have a shocking rebound rate. I'm not sure if you've read this, but the rebound rate of GLP-1 is horrendous. In fact, most people who go on them within a year have gained 2/3 of the weight back. There have been actually reports of people who have not only regained the weight, but actually regained double the amount of weight they lost. So if they lost, let's say, a stone, they might have then gained 2 stone back. And some people have had reports of the appetite coming back with what they've called a vengeance, really. So, after this kind of long period of suppressing your appetite, the body knows it's been in a depleted state. It knows that the fuel and the nutrients have been cut off, and then it goes into overdrive, essentially. And a lot of people have had reports of it being a bit of a nightmare in terms of gaining weight post injections. So that's a brief overview of the drug itself, what's happened, where it stands at the moment, and we're obviously going to discuss a few other kind of key factors.
It's basically got the potential to destroy obesity. It has that potential. I'm quite confident of that. I've brought here, this drug's been created to combat frankenfoods. And I start Frankenfoods.
Okay.
Like Frankenstein foods. Stuff that's made in a lab.
I love that.
All right. I did coin that from another podcast, so I have to credit them.
Frankenfoods.
Frankenfoods, like, you think
what would
about
you class as a Frankenfood?
Oh, donuts, cookies, pizza, crisps, anything that's sort of made in like a lab.
All the good shit, basically.
All the good shit.
Yeah.
Like, I think Pringles. Somebody told me the other day there's no actual potatoes in Pringles. It's like potato powder.
Oh, no.
Sorry. I'm sorry for killing that for people. Yeah.
I thought they cut it off in that curve.
No,
they cut that curve into the
3D printed.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So you look at that in terms of, for years, food's been engineered to make us eat more of it. Wow. So now we've had to engineer a drug to combat that, which is pretty bonkers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just to set the table a little bit with that one. Pardon the pun. We want to make people aware of that.
Just a bit of history as well, I guess, with weight loss drugs. This isn't the first time a big weight loss drug has come around. We've had other ones in the past that have come about and unfortunately haven't been as successful as this. Some have showed signs of it being successful. The biggest caveat to the other ones not making it as far as it has done with Ozempic, Semaglutide, is purely because of the side effects. There was one that came out a few years ago. I've completely forgotten the name of it. But essentially, it was an absolute nightmare for the pharmaceutical company that developed it because it was one of their fastest selling products of all time, as most weight loss drugs will be. And this, Ozempic, Semaglutide, same thing. This is, everyone's buying into it now, especially a lot of the big names, Hollywood stars are making this very popularised at the moment. Media is giving it a lot of coverage. But the one from a few years ago, what happened was it showed some long-term side effects when it came to, I think it was digestive issues and things like that, and people were having really bad bouts of diarrhea, and it was rampant through the people that took it, not in the short term, but more in the long term. I think it was the record for most compensation paid by a pharmaceutical company for a drug. I think it was somewhere in the region of 12.5 billion that they ended up paying back, which is phenomenal, isn't it? Now, the crazy thing with pharmaceutical companies is that into their budget for developing drugs is usually a insurance policy where they will take out insurance with big insurance companies to basically protect themselves against it. Now, the mad thing about this is a lot of these drugs aren't fully tested before they go out to the public, especially in America. It takes a while for these things to be thoroughly tested, and as sometimes we don't know the initial signs. Like the digestive issues with this other drug, they weren't highlighted until like a year down the line. Obviously, by then, this company's made billions, and to be honest, the 12 billion will have been probably a drop in the ocean compared to what they actually made from it, which gives you an idea of how much these pharmaceutical companies make. But there's always some kind of insurance policy with these drugs because they need to protect themselves. But they always make the money back. It's always some kind of big, huge £1 billion profit. It's just, this one is phenomenally good in all areas. There's been no short-term or long-term side effects. They've been around for well over a year now. The Kardashians have been on these drugs. Again, a lot of celebrities have publicised them and made them popular. But so far, so good for the GLP-1s.
I've never seen a weight loss drug catch fire like this before, where things have just sort of, everyone seems to be talking about it. And I think it is important to look at the nuance, because you see celebrities pushing things and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you ultimately have to ask the question, who's it for? Who is it going to benefit? Who could be of detriment to it? And I'm a huge fan of like Dr. Lane Norton's work, and he's very much in the middle of the road in terms of it's fine for this person. You might be questioning for this person right now. Speaking away from other people's quotes, my main concern is if someone is on an appetite suppressant, your entire appetite is suppressed. That's including protein intake. That's including, dietary fats. So you think a under muscle, under fat consumed population, you've essentially got a very weak, under muscled nation there, under muscled world. And I don't know if anyone knows much about sarcopenia, but it's a very dangerous spot to be, like under muscled, brittle bones, not being very functional as you get older. So you almost have to ask that question, like, is that what we're going to end up with?
The essential nuts and bolts of it, you're cutting off nutrients.
Yeah.
Like if you cut off micronutrients, macronutrients, whatever you put into your body via food, you're essentially suppressing that. Now, for some people, a little bit of suppressant is good. It will mean that they don't have 3,000 calories a day, they have 2,500. And over the space of a few months, they might drop a few stone, which is great. But for a lot of people, that might mean that some days, and there's been a lot of reports of this, they just won't eat. And they're not hungry. From the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, they're not hungry. So they're only eating like 3 or 4 days in the week. And that is phenomenally detrimental to like brain development and staying on point with your energy levels. And there's going to be a big drop in those things, I would imagine, as well. Both energy levels, motivation, enthusiasm for everything that you do. Yes, you might be looking great, but what does that also come at the cost of? You as a person, your personality, your career, potentially.
And I think for a lot of people, is the weight the issue? For a big portion of America, 100%. Like there's a lot of, there's a very high percentage of morbidly obese individuals whose life is at risk because of the weight. But for someone who's wanting to shift a few pounds, you have to ask the question, like, can we maybe do this a different way? Or maybe if they've tried and they almost want this as a bit of a kickstart to go to coincide with the behaviours, that's how I'd probably look at doing it. And I know a lot of the studies that have been cited have not really factored in like GLP-1 with resistance training or GLP-1 with a high protein diet and that sort of stuff. So I think we've still got a lot to learn from it in terms of how we can probably incorporate it and how can people best put it into practice.
I just want to circle back to something that you mentioned there. Is weight the issue? Is that the reason why these people are essentially unhappy. Because when you're looking to lose a weight loss drug, you're obviously unhappy about something. Maybe you feel like it's your weight, but there's a large population of people who, you know what bariatric surgery is, you know what, like over here we call it the
gastric band.
Gastric band, that's the one I'm looking for. And what essentially happens there is the same thing. You just, instead of a drug suppressing your appetite, you're shrinking the stomach down so it can't take on as much food, and then ultimately it will suppress your appetite. No, you can't eat as much in terms of your meal sizes. Now, over time, this can be quite effective, but there's actually a high percentage of people who commit suicide post gastric band, post bariatric surgery, and they reckon the reason for this is because they've come to the conclusion that it's not the weight that's the issue. They thought losing the weight would be great. They thought after they'd lost 2, 3, 4, 5 stone, they'd feel amazing. And they realise they don't. And they still feel shit about their life. They're still very unhappy in themselves. And they now have nothing to turn to, no one to blame, nothing about themselves that they can call on. And that can be a really horrible place to be. And it's, I'm going to imagine there's probably going to be some level of that with this weight loss drug as well, where people lose the weight, still very, very unhappy. Definitely going to name no names here, but I had a client a few years ago who lost 5.5 stone, phenomenal amount of weight, phenomenal. And she used to say something to me in sessions that always stuck with me. Now, this is a person who's drastically changed the way they look, phenomenally fitter, phenomenally in better shape, getting compliments all the time from friends, family who haven't seen her for ages. And I remember one day, because I used to say to her, this must make you feel really nice. And she goes, I feel nice, but I don't feel any happier. And I never really looked too much into it at the time, but it wasn't maybe until I started looking more into these weight loss drugs and the psychology around it that it really kind of made me think, actually, I get it now. It wasn't the weight that was making her unhappy. She thought it was. And she was, heavily overweight, needed to lose a lot of weight. But when she got into a place where she was just like everyone else and she had no extra weight, really, she wasn't any happier. It didn't have that same desired effect that I've seen it have with other people. And she's definitely in that category of there's something else going on there. It's not the weight that's causing the issue.
Have you ever looked into, because, to put bluntly, diets, weight loss, a lot of that stuff does fail. Like the bounce back rate is quite remarkable. So in the space of 3 to 5 years, you're looking at 95% fail rate.
Wow.
Typically, and I'm not so much pulling that number out of the sky. I can try and get where that number's from. But of those 5% of people who succeed, a common occurrence is like they've reinvented who they are. And that's what they say, like they've essentially become a different person. And I think that's really important to say, like a lot of severely overweight individuals, I remember speaking to someone in particular who was severely overweight, and this is something that they did pick up on themselves, where they said that they had some emotional issues. They had some underlying issues which did contribute to the weight gain. That's a very, very common thing that can happen in people, and I think it's important to be kind in this situation, to say you're not lesser of a person if you choose to have this drug. You're not just being lazy, you're not just jabbing yourself and everything's better. But I think it is important to pair it with physical, psychological. It's a whole holistic health perspective, and if you're just focusing on one aspect, there's something called a health hex that I talk through with clients, which is like finance, fitness, fun, family. If all those are not balanced, there's going to be a certain level of unhappiness there somewhere, and I really want to encourage people to do that when they are, if they are potentially looking at or they're intrigued by something like this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that I don't want people to feel like if they take the drug they're copping out. But it all stems back to me about honesty. This is something I really reiterate with my clients and anyone I take on as someone who comes onto the R5 program is, straight away, I'm really trying to drive honesty. Can you be honest, not only with me, but can you actually be honest with yourself? Because a lot of people, when they get to the point where they need weight loss drugs, or they need to have a coach, or they need someone look in their corner, they've been very unhonest with themselves. They've been unhonest about how much they're consuming, how much they're moving, what it takes to kind of get back to where they need to be. And if they can be really honest with themselves, you can honestly say, okay, I've tried this myself. I know doing it by myself, taking the kind of gym route, calorie deficit route, it just hasn't worked. Could this be a bit of a catalyst and a stepping stone to me going and getting some better habits and really working on my lifestyle and developing me as a person who can be someone who's in shape? I guess it kind of ties nicely into like my own stance. Like, where does my own, I guess, ideals lie around this? And I always think any form of medical intervention is always the last option, basically. Yeah. You want to always try and do things by yourself. There's no doubt about that. We don't want people opting straight away for the medical intervention, the weight loss drugs. That is a bit of a cop-out. If you haven't tried to lose the weight by yourself, if you haven't tried to move more, if you've just seen something online where it's the magic pill, which it essentially kind of almost is, the magic injection, and you're just going through it because you can't be arsed moving, the chances of you failing afterwards are so high, you might as well not even start. To the point where you might mess yourself up in the long run. That would be my biggest advice to people. Don't go on it because you're lazy, essentially. Yeah. And there is going to be some of that for sure. There's no doubt about it. But there's going to be a certain population of people, and I think most people generally, before they go on a drug like this, they'll have tried the usual stuff. They'll have tried the gym, walking, moving more, getting into a sport, looking after what they eat, improving the quality, maybe some calorie deficit stuff. But that doesn't work for everyone. But I actually wanted to talk hypothetically for a second, right, about an idea that I had when I was researching this drug and looking into its potential usage and whether it could get more mainstream. I had this idea in my mind, and again, let's talk hypothetically for a minute. Let's say there is like no short or long-term repercussions ever found of this drug, and for the rest of eternity, this drug, it will get you results. There's no long-term, short-term health complications, right? I can actually see a world where coaches use this as a tool to get the ball rolling with clients who can't seem to change their habits and eating and then their lifestyle in the kind of early stages of weight loss. I can see that world. I can. I'm not sure if you'd agree with me on this or not, but I'm not ashamed to say that I'll admit there's been clients that I just couldn't get through to. There's been clients I've coached that just didn't respond to any of the practical or psychological tricks that I've tried to enforce on them when it comes to changing their lifestyle. And that lack of weight loss initially, I know, left them feeling like it would never happen, and ultimately they quit. I can imagine a scenario where the drug is prescribed by a doctor, and whilst the GLP-1 does its thing, gradually bringing weight down, and also keeps the client high in motivation because they are seeing the results nice and slowly, a coach works with them alongside this drug to improve their eating habits, improve their movement, improve their lifestyle choices. All of which are easy, obviously, once they start losing weight as well. It's easier, to move around and have more energy and feel like you can make those changes when you weigh less. Like, let's say you've dropped 1 or 2 stone thanks to the drug. Now everything just seems easier. Going to the gym seems easier. Moving around day to day seems easier. Giving the long-term chance of success a massive boost if this is the case. The coach may even then be hired by a doctor potentially as a part of an aftercare program. So you might get these big corporations hiring coaches to say, right, we know the fail rate's really bad. How do we increase the popularity of this drug so that people stay on it forever and actually really do want to use it? Well, maybe we hire a coach who can work alongside them. There's a catch-22 there where maybe the coach works on their lifestyle so much that they actually stop taking the drug. Then there's the kind of other aspects of like, well, maybe the coach can essentially prolong their period of losing weight and keeping them on the drug. So it depends which way the pharmaceutical companies will go with that. But there's a few different ideas, I guess, there.
I really like your stance on it because it does rely on a lot of like synergy between industries, where the pharmaceutical industry working with like the holistic health industry. It's not really a match made in heaven, and it should be.
Hasn't got a great history.
No, and it really should. It'd be nice if it was, and I don't want to talk like pie in the sky, but a lot of what you've said would be dream scenario. I think this as a tool for people to have in the tool belt is unbelievable. Like it'd be absolutely fantastic. And there's something in psychology called the writing reflex. Have you come across this before?
No.
The writing reflex is like if someone comes to me with a problem and I go, oh, just do this. Like it's like a reflex to solve the problem. rather than like delay and find like explore options. And I've certainly been guilty of this in the past, especially as a younger trainer, where somebody says, "Oh, I'm just struggling to sleep," and you just go, "Oh, just sleep longer." And it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like that's an extreme example, or it's like move less, move more, eat less. You know?
It's too simple, almost too obvious.
Yeah, or your writing reflexes to give what you're currently reading, if you know what I mean. So this for me is the pharmaceuticals writing reflex of, we have a problem, let's fix it the only way we know how, rather than looking at, right, how do we fix this long term? How do we put industries together and behaviours together to actually make this work forever?
Yeah, it's a good analogy. And I think, but given the success of weight loss drugs in the past, it was only a matter of time before something like this came out again.
Yeah.
And they just seem to have cracked it this time.
I think a lot of people tie the behaviours to the results. So if they just think, oh, this is only successful because of this drug, whereas actually, like you said, if the coach works with them, I'm hoping they pair the relationship with, right, I've had a kickstart from this drug, and now I have the confidence, the mobility, and the ability to put these behaviours in place that I want to put in place. I think that's a really powerful stance to take. Unfortunately, it's not a very sexy one because it's just bang in the middle.
Yeah.
It's full, like, middle of the road, I'm getting Splinter sat on the fence territory. But
I can see a lot of people, especially in the fitness world, seeing these weight loss drugs as potentially a bit of a rival to the industry, because these drugs are doing things that the coaching industry is designed to do. But there's a reason the success rate is so low. Or after you come off it, it's because it all ties back to lifestyle, eating habits, the fundamentals of what got you there in the first place. If you don't work on you and how you operate day to day, week to week, it is essentially just a huge plaster over a very big issue.
Yeah, and I do feel like I'm going to go very like what if territory now, but what if someone does get to their end goal and then they move the goalposts and they say, oh, actually no, I didn't just want to lose the weight, I wanted to be shredded as well. And I actually wanted like really nice rounded shoulders. All of a sudden you've got a bit of conflicting goals there, a goal which almost requires you to eat more to build muscle and build tissue. Yeah. But your behaviours don't fall in line with that, or you've never seen how to do that. You've never done that before.
I can imagine a world where people go on this for quite a long time, and you do see this with some girls who don't take the drug route. They just do a huge cut, weight loss, get maybe some eating disorders around food because of the amount they've lost, and then they go to like, right, I want to build muscle now, and they're that real barrier to eating more. And I've had it with clients loads where we do drop loads of weight, goalpost change, now I want to build my chest, now I want to build my glutes. And we go, right, we've got to eat more. No, I don't want to eat anymore. Now, no, we've got to build muscle now. You have to eat more calories. And like, I'm not up for that. And this drug could be another reason why people do that. So they've eaten a certain amount on the drug for so long. Whether they come off it or not, maybe they just get used to eating that same amount. Like if you're on this drug for let's say you're on this drug for 2 years, right? And you've been used to eating the same 3 meals, the same quantities for a long, long period of time. Even if your appetite comes back, you're in a routine there, a real hard routine of eating the same food, same meals. And depending on how ravenous you are once the appetite comes back, you may actually just stay where you are with that. And then that might lead to, again, some eating disorders long term. Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned about eating disorders as well, because I think it was Johan Harry, who we both cited for this episode, who sort of mentioned about potentially what is the damage that this is going to cause to people with eating disorders. People who think they need to go on it but don't. They suffer with a bit of body dysmorphia or some severe body dysmorphia. They maybe trick the system to get on it, and actually it spirals them down such a dark path of malnutrition and starvation. And you have to ask those sort of extreme questions. And I know I'm going very dark with this now, but you have to ask those questions because it's another short term click your fingers and it's done.
Yeah.
But then what? Like, what happens then? Like, what happens when you decide to come off for it, or you just like, yeah, whatever, I'll just stay on it for the rest of my life? Like,
I think what I've been thinking about then was like, all drugs are crazy, right? Every single drug we take, from paracetamol to these weight loss drugs, all have side effects. side effects that are pretty radical in some people. Some people it can kill. Some people it can just send a little bit loopy in the head. Some people it can give them disorders of all sorts of kinds for years and years to come, potentially for the rest of their life. I do think it's wild sometimes drugs are just handed out so freely for stuff like a doctor, knowing all the side effects, goes, right, I'm just going to keep prescribing, knowing that a certain percentage of the people that I prescribe these to are going to be messed up for a long time.
As someone who is on a medication for life, technically, and it's completely changed my life, it's allowed me to do a lot of things via my arthritic condition. If I didn't have to do that, I wouldn't do it. That's just a moral choice on my part. If I could get away with not taking this injection and still being able to do what I wanted to do, I would do it.
Yeah.
And that's because, I don't know, I don't want to be reliant on a drug or a substance to get me by. At this stage, I have to, and rewind 100 years ago, I'd have been in a different position because it wasn't available. If I were born 100 years ago, I'd be in a pretty bad state. But when do you think all this started? Like, have you got a specific pinpoint where you go, it was at that point that all of a sudden this obesity epidemic of a world that used to die from starvation is now almost dying from the opposite? Like, do you think
if you look back, you can probably gauge it by the kind of decades, really. Like 70s, everyone was in good shape. 80s, everyone was in good shape. Prior to that, obesity was quite a rare thing, really. 90s, I think, is when that started to change. I think we started to see the boom of like fast food. Fast food in the 90s became quite a big thing globally, and a lot more manufactured foods. There's no doubt in the 90s, like, food became a lot more processed, essentially. Processed food was always there. Like, I always think back to like the kind of the 1940s, 50s, and we had like Spam, and Spam was around, the war rations and things like that. That's essentially why processed food became a thing, didn't it? In the early days, it was to to fuel the war, to have food that could last long periods of time without being refrigerated, and then it became very obvious that those foods are cheap to produce, they last a long time, and most of them taste really good. You can make them taste however you want. We can put as much sugar, as much salt. We can put all the kind of different preservatives in there that we want, some sweeteners, flavourings. And we just suss something that actually it's probably more effective if we do it that way. And over time, I think that probably hit a head in the 90s, I can't remember. I've seen some stats somewhere about kind of like levels of obesity nationally and globally, and how I think it was during the 90s it just basically shot up. And then it's obviously continued to rise and rise until then. I do think that certain nations now are going the other way. I think the UK is coming down. I think America generally is coming down now. We've spoken on the podcast before, I think, about Mexico. I think Mexico is one of the fastest growing ones.
I think it's cheaper to get Coca-Cola than water.
Oh, is it? Wow.
Like, structurally in America, in Mexico, there's a documentary I watched which there's basically people who are having amputations just because diabetes gets that bad. It's quite scary. I think if you'll be able to search it if you search like Mexico, Coca-Cola epidemic.
But coming back to the weight loss drug, like, what could this do for that population? Could that just stem it a little bit? Could that drug potentially just go, right, we're going to get some of the most severe cases on this? And one thing I was trying to highlight a second ago when I said it's mad that doctors hand out drugs anyway with all the kind of related side effects. Yes, most people might not experience any of those, but there's going to be a certain percentage that do. And I think there needs to be some kind of follow-up care with this. Like, with a weight loss drug that you're giving to people, where it's so heavily reliant on not just that drug itself, but their lifestyle alongside it. Why is there no, like, right, we're going to put you on this drug, but we also have a coach who's going to check in with you once a week, and this is how your program's going to work now. If you don't check in with your coach, if you're not able to communicate with them for a reason, we take you off the drug. Why aren't there some limitations there? Why aren't there? Maybe it could be a monetary thing. Maybe the pharmaceutical companies don't want you to come off this long term. They don't want it to be a short term fix.
Why would they?
Why would they? They want you to be on it for a long time.
I fully appreciate we're sort of going into like complex socioeconomic stuff now as well. And I do think it's worth pointing out, because if a lot of the population is on GLP-1 agonist, and it's a huge issue for like fast food companies. I honestly think that because it's so market led and it's people who have things because it tastes good, I honestly think part of the solution is you really need to put pressure on these massive producers of this food to basically say, like, listen, your market's going to be dead soon. All right, you really need to adapt and pivot. And I sort of see that going hand in hand with maybe the solution of coaching and that sort of stuff. And I think we have our biases that maybe coaching is going to solve a lot, because why would education not solve something? You know, if you think someone's educated, they're motivated, they want something, coaching can quite easily be a huge complement to something.
Yeah.
I'm going to predict that there might hopefully be like a fitness industry boom where a lot of these people may get the result and then they think, I've not maybe considered what's going to happen when I lose all this muscle, and actually my function's not great and I'm not really happy with the way I look anymore. I've just got a funny feeling that our industry is just going to explode. I really do.
So you think off the back of the weight loss drug, people are going to probably do. I think I agree. I could agree with this to a certain degree. The drug could make them lose the weight. They come off the drug, realise they're gaining weight again, and go, right, what do I need to do? And I'm not in control of my lifestyle. Can I get someone to come in and help me stay like this? Because people, once they've dropped weight, there's always that fear of regression, isn't there? There's always that fear of, I don't want to lose this. I like the way I look now. And maybe people will jump towards a coach to kind of really go, right, the nuts and bolts of it are, I do need to change my lifestyle. I do need help with the way I eat and the way I move. I need accountability for that. And the other thing is, I guess you could get people who take it and they are scared, essentially.
Yeah.
They're scared that if they come off it, there'll be a huge regression from there. So there's two. I agree to a certain factor. I think that it could be a big thing for our industry long term.
Again, hypothetically, we still don't know. Like tomorrow, it could come out and be like, oh, by the way, this is really bad for you. Like it causes this side effect. That could genuinely happen because we just don't know. You know, I know it took a long time for something like smoking to be unearthed. I don't expect that anymore. I think science is very fast nowadays. Yeah. So you have to think in 5 years' time, if all of a sudden it goes, oh, by the way, this causes this horrendous condition or this horrendous problem, now what? You've essentially left with a different problem. And I honestly see that the way out of that is lifestyle coaching, behaviour management, essentially building more muscle. And that's a hard thing to do when you've got people eating 1,400, 1,500 calories, you know, for the rest of their life. It can be tough.
Just moving on to the psychological aspects of these drugs, like just starting with, why do you think someone would take it in the first place? Why do you think a person would go, right, I'm going to make that leap now and use this drug to lose weight? What do you think might be the first catalyst for that?
If I had to zoom out and think about the avatar of the person who would maybe say this, it is someone who's maybe tried everything. In their words, they've tried everything. They've tried the diet and exercise route. They maybe even have gone through certain procedures and it's just not worked. They've always put the weight back on. If there is an injection they can take for the rest of their life that guarantees that weight stays off and essentially improves their life, I don't know. It's worth considering.
The funny thing is that doctors and the pharmaceutical companies themselves, on the packaging, I think it does say not for long-term use. That is one of the things they say. And I believe that might be a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card for them into a certain degree, because they might say, have a recommended thing in the small print saying, like, don't take it for more than 2 or 3 months. And then if some long-term side effects come off and people have admitted, or took it for a year, well, we had it in the fine print, so we're protected against you. Now, I've not actually looked at I've not actually used these drugs. I've not actually looked at the kind of the small print, but I'm going to assume there'll be some direction in because you get these little kind of pamphlets of every drug, don't you? And there'll be something in the small print that says some usage and duration of usage guidelines. So, I think that the people that will opt for this generally are people that will have tried most things. But they'll probably end up staying in it for too long because they'll realise it works. It really heavily works. Yeah. And how do I get past this now? How do I get to the point where I don't have to take the drug, but I don't gain all the weight again?
You can almost compare what's going to happen or what has happened to like when the iPhone started, you know? And I realise I'm going massively wildly off topic now, but when the iPhone first got released, somebody got an iPhone, they loved it, and they referred it to like 5 of their friends. They were like, you need to get an iPhone. Like, they're so good. If that starts catching fire, what we've probably seen with this weight loss drug, that's essentially what's happening right now, where people are just it's that referral, like they almost get married to this ideology of this is the solution, you should do it as well. Or when someone go, oh, you look great, how have you lost all this weight? That's the first thing they're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's hard. Whereas, we've had it ourselves where people have said, you look great, what have you been doing? Oh, I've been working with Ryan, I've been working with Brad.
Yeah.
It's great for us, but you have to be very aware of how people associate the success.
Yeah. Word of mouth's great for us as a business, but it'll be great for Ozempic, and it'll be great for all these other companies who are producing these GLP-1s. It's
the more people know, the better equipped you are.
Yeah. And if we live in this world now where no other time in history has it been so popularized about the way you look, and it's getting kind of worse every decade, I think, isn't it? I remember even in the 90s it's been discussed about like the way people look, and it becoming a bit of an issue. And in the 90s it was like everyone wanted to be like Kate Moss, didn't they, and be the kind of the super skinny, and that image has changed over time about what girls really want to look like. I think probably more the Kardashian look is now in kind of in full flow. I mean, you got in town now, like how many girls just look like the Kardashians? It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I think the intensity of how we look, and the emphasis we put on how we look and how much we value people who look good is getting better and better and better, or stronger and stronger, shall I say. Yeah. So when something's getting that strong and then a drug like this comes along, you can just see why it's almost perfect timing for the drug as well.
How do you think it could be better? So like the message that's being pushed now, it's not just the clothes you wear anymore. It's not just where you go on holiday. It's the frame that you've got. It's that's super. It's almost like a status symbol now, isn't it?
Oh yeah, the way you look is like I mean, there's so many positive things to being in shape, right? I do think it's a great way of signalling that you look after yourself. You take pride in the way you look. I think it's a great signal that you're able to structure your day and week and actually find time to exercise and train and be in shape. But you're going to get the category of people who are in that pool, don't need any pushing, don't need any drugs, actually have their shit nailed down.
Yeah.
And then this pool of people who are only doing it through weight loss drugs. And it's a bit like a few years ago, some photos of Kim Kardashian came out on a beach, and she was in Mexico. And usually any photos that come out publicly of Kim Kardashian are all done by her own photo team. And once they get the photos, they'll airbrush them and make her look, as amazing as she can be. Anyway, these rogue Mexican photographers managed to capture some snaps of her on the beach, and it was horrendous. Like she obviously had so much surgery on her ass that it was just like they call it like diaper butt, where her bum looked like a huge. When a kid's got a full diaper and it just sticks off ridiculously, and it kind of comes back under the bottom, and then she's got like no legs almost.
I promise I'm not going to Google this.
If you haven't Googled it, it's worth Googling. It's weird, really, really weird. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if she's paid to take it offline, because you can actually do that nowadays. But I think she looked like nothing that anyone had seen in the photos of her online, an image that people weren't aware of. Like, this can't be Kim Kardashian. She never looks like that. But what happened was, as we know, if you train your glutes, if you want a big bum, by nature, your hamstrings are going to grow. Yep. Your quads are going to grow. Other muscles around that area are going to grow as well as it. Even if you're not directly working, then there's tension in that area. She'd obviously done the other thing where she'd obviously got an amazingly looking ass where it looked like there was a lot of muscle in there, but she had no legs. There was nothing put into her legs, and it just looked completely like we had this Fibonacci sequence where we know straight away when someone's had some kind of surgery or something's quite off. You can tell straight away. Yeah. And I think people are going to start looking like that. You're going to have a certain sector of people who you can tell just aren't healthy. And even though they're in shape, they won't look healthy. I think that the longer people take these drugs and the more popular this GLP-1 gets, I think you'll have this certain, it'll be maybe coined the GLP-1 look, or the weight loss look, or the Ozempic semaglutide look, where people look in shape, but they don't look healthy.
It's a hard one to talk about, essentially, because if you think, mentally speaking, there will be people who take this because essentially it's going to make them healthier. It's going to allow them to be on the planet, to do what they love for longer, because they're not at as much health risk. There'll also be other people who psychologically do it for self-validation or the validation of others, shall we say. I had a little profound thought on holiday, which I know you come across when I put it in a nice little quote, all about self-worth, which is essentially if you put your self-worth in the hands of others, you're a right dafton. Like,
Yeah,
it's very Yorkshire, but
Yeah.
you have to look and think, why? Why would you do that? Like,
Yeah.
you know, let's think, is that going to make you happy? Like, what do you want? Like,
I actually think not a lot of people know what they want. I'll be totally honest there. I don't actually think enough people know what they want to look like. So they go, I like that. I just want to look like that. And it's easy to go, that looks good.
Yeah.
Everyone else looks like that. Let's just go for that.
Training and diets, like, it's very much a reversible decision. Like Chris Williamson talks about this a lot. If you're going to commit time and effort to something, it's quite easily reversible in a way. Like if you try a certain training plan for 12 weeks, you don't really like it, just change it. Like it's quite reversible. You know, as long as you don't batter yourself or injure yourself, like it's quite reversible. Diet, exactly the same. If you go on a certain diet and you want to change it, it's reversible. You can change it. Whereas,
I think people are quite totalitarian in their thoughts there. So they've got a lot pinned on, right, I'm going to try this diet. If it doesn't work though, everything's out the window. Yeah,
and I think from a solution perspective, I've noted down here, like the person who I think I would recommend this to, or if they sway with it and I know a little bit more about them, it is going to be a fantastic option for extremely obese individuals who's literally, there's bigger health risks there, let's face it.
Yeah.
Without them losing the weight or actually reducing the pressure on the frame, their internal organs, all that stuff. Everyone else, I know you put like a bit of a heuristic there for like 27 BMI, like everyone else just approach with caution. Like, ask the question. Everything that you've just said, like, why do you want to do this? Like, what do you want? Do you want it for yourself to be healthier? Do you want it for your other people to say, don't you look great? Or you've got to ask them questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think the 27 BMI thing is wild, circling back to that, because 27 BMI is probably most of the population. So what we're going to do, we're going to just give most of the population this weight loss drug because they don't feel happy and they feel like they're struggling with their weight. What I didn't really see online much was what are the mandatory categories for someone being administered this. So what are doctors looking for? What are the key signs? Because I'm not going to give it to everyone who's got a BMI of 27. What are the kind of key things that you use to say to that doctor? A bit like when you want to get seen at the doctor or you want to get a certain medication, you go in there and you say certain things. What's the criteria for people getting prescribed this? That's what I'd love to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it a mental health thing? Is it I've tried everything else? Is it some other underlying health conditions? You do potentially get people who, for whatever reason, have underactive thyroids, have other issues, PCOS, things that give them a barrier to losing weight. Maybe this might be a good thing for them to get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
But I think what we're really trying to get across is you shouldn't just opt straight for this, number one. You should always go medical intervention as your last port of call. But if there are serious, like if you are heavily overweight, then maybe it is like a good option.
Zooming out in his perspective helicopter now, have you got any predictions for what it's going to be like in 10 years' time? Because if I rewind to 2014 and knew that this was an option, I probably wouldn't have believed you that it's going to spread as much as it has done, and I probably wouldn't think as philosophically about it, like what could go wrong and what could go right with it. But I don't know, 10 years' time, like...
Well, there's two options. Option number one, we find a long-term problem and it gets pulled straight away. There's big repercussions for that, for sure. Option number two is there's no long-term side effects. This drug is around forever, basically, and it's a great way of dropping weight on a short-term basis. It's used... I think it will become more... I think over time what people will realise is I can't keep taking it forever and then just stay in shape. Whether people decide to do that or not, I don't know. But I think those people who do that will have probably more health risks and other factors that come with avoiding nutrients and micronutrients over a long period of time. They might have kidney defects and digestive issues because they're not getting that nutrients that they need. Brain function might go down. They might be going in, realising their endocrine system's completely on its arse just because of the drug. And as soon as they stop taking the drug, all those things rejuvenate. That's going to be, without a shadow of a doubt, for a lot of people, one of the kind of side effects of it. But I think this drug might actually be like it might get rid of 8-week challenges.
Those pesky 8-week challenges.
You know, it might get rid of like
Yeah.
the lose as much weight as you can in 12 weeks.
The semaglutide challenge.
Yeah, the semaglutide challenge. Like it'll be everyone doing that instead of like some coach's 12-week challenge. So I think if there's no other, and obviously depending on how much a coach charges compared to how much this costs, even if it's similar price, why would you just not? Why would you, for the average person who's not particularly motivated and can't be asked, why would you not just take the semaglutide route?
Mm-hmm. Oh, mate, it's tough, isn't it? Because you sort of think, like, we've got a dream scenario in his head where pharmaceuticals work with coaches and we really improve people's health, and the fast food industry really tightens up on what they do and how they manufacture to put people's health above the taste buds, if that makes sense. I don't see that happening personally. Or the other one, which is like we said, you end up having people who rely on this all their life. They end up severely under-muscled. They've got huge, essentially like malnutrition. They're lacking a lot of essential nutrients. And
I think that could be a big issue. I think that you'll get a lot of people who get malnutrition because they go on it for so long and they don't come off it.
Yeah.
And you take away nutrients that your body needs, and you're going to have some issues in the future.
A positive might be that people obviously take the drug, they become more mobile, and that makes them more active as a result. But then it's the entire picture. It's can you couple that together, not just with the activity, but activity and nutrition, and lifestyle, and the psychological aspects. Like, there's so many facets to cover that if you don't and you just focus on one, where does that leave us?
Not in a good spot, basically.
Yeah, and it's tough, and it's an option, but yeah, it's a hard one to how to leave this today, mate.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I'm not actually sure how to conclude this episode.
I think that's testament to how polarizing it is, because I wouldn't say we've come into this with an agenda. We're bang in the middle.
100%. I mean, I've talked you through my stance. My stance is the fact that I actually can see a world where potentially for a certain demographic of my clients that I've coached in the past that I haven't been successful with, that might have been the tipping point. That might have been the difference between them in the early stages, giving up, saying it doesn't work for me, I can't commit to it, I'm not seeing the weight loss. People have so much invested in a number on a scale that if you can get a drug that gives you just a little bit of movement on that scale in the short term, how much better is that going to make them stick to the diet? How much better is that going to make them keep walking? Something's working. And then you can maybe say, look, I don't know if it's the GLP-1, I don't know if it's this, but something's working. Let's just keep doing everything, and we'll kind of see where we get to from there. We keep pushing it over time. We go, let's just try a week without the GLP-1. Let's try a month without it, see if we can keep these habits going.
Yeah.
There's a scenario in my mind where this works great.
Yeah.
There is a scenario in my mind where this works fantastic. It's a great thing to be administered alongside, obviously, doctors' advice. But wherever there's going to be something like this, there's going to be abuse, and that's, I guess, really what we want to highlight in today's podcast. Is there's a lot of dangers with this as well. Like there are, and in even if there is no direct long-term side effects, there's going to be indirect long-term side effects, mainly through like malnutrition and things like that. So maybe that's how we end it. Like we say, it's open-ended. There's going to be really good positives with this. It all depends on where you lie, and let's say, for example, you are someone who is contemplating this, or even someone who is on this right now. I've had people contact me, because we mentioned this in previous episodes, haven't we? And they've said, I'm taking it, and this is what's happening. Number one, get in contact with me, because I'd love to know how you found it. I would love to know more about this drug, what it's done for you, whether it's been positive, whether it's been negative. I want to hear all the stories, essentially. And number two, if you are stuck for whatever reason, whether you want to take it, or whether it's about how you come off it, let's say, and you are unsure about what will happen post GLP-1. Again, get in contact. I'd love to, help you out and help you navigate this. Just for my own, sense of understanding it as well, and what people are going through. Because like I said, I can see a world where this works, and the more I can understand about it now, the better for me, and the better advice you'll get.
100%, and I think to give people some actionable stuff, like just be aware of your own writing reflex, and I'll keep coming back to that, but look and think, is this the first thing that you're going to do, or is this the fifth thing that you might try? Just be super aware of where your own writing reflex is, and maybe just what you want to do. But again, I very much share your dream. Your industry's working together, everyone collaborating, cooperating. I really do. I hope it works.
We're smiling at each other like that's wishful thinking.
Yeah, it's never going to happen, is it? But you can hope.
We can dream big.
Yeah, we can hope.
Well, guys, hopefully that you've had some kind of, informative information there about the drug itself. Like I said, if you've got any other questions about it, we'd love to help out. If you've got any kind of stories about it, we'd love to hear them. But until the next one, we'll see you guys in this podcast.
See you soon.